I call upon Councillor Izzy Knowles to move the second amendment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to present this amendment in my name and that of Councillor Bababaz. In preparing for this speech, I look back to a speech that I made over a year ago when I was given a place on the Police and Crime panel, and a lot of it feels relevant to the motion being put forward by the Conservative group today. Policing is something I'm very passionate about. I served in West Midlands Police for over 30 years. And I described having joined the police in 1979, and the three most pivotal points that, in my view, transformed policing for the better happened over the 3 decades that I was a police officer. The 80s, there was the introduction of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, which introduced accountability of prisoner handling and independence of the Crown Prosecution Service. The 90s, the Macpherson report into the murder of Stephen Lawrence forced policing to address systemic racism and discrimination across the ranks. And in the 2000s, Tony Blair's investment in neighbourhood policing, ring-fenced officers from other duties, introduced police community support officers, partnership working and accountability to the public. And I like that model so much that I spent the last 7 years of my career as a neighbourhood sergeant. And when I look back now, I think how lucky I was to have had that opportunity to shape that model. I was given a team of 6 police constables and 4 PCSOs, and we were all ring-fenced, only attending response jobs within our neighbourhood area if we happened to be around the corner or if it was something we had an interest in. I allocated each member of my team their own microbeat, everybody in it. That included the key community contacts, the businesses, the schools, the isolated and elderly, the drinkers who hung out in the shopping areas, the young people who hung out on the street corners, and their mothers phone numbers. And of course, they also got to know the more prolific offenders. And more importantly, all those people knew that the officers knew who they were. And one of the best tools we had in our neighbourhood model was the Safe for Estates meeting. It was a ward-based monthly multi-agency meeting where we discussed the most problematic cases and the hotspots, and we agreed joint actions and solutions. They could range from joint visits with housing officers, targeted outreach youth work, drug, even organised visits to brothels with charities who would offer support to sex workers. Councillor Tim Huxtable will remember some of the crime prevention projects we undertook with the local youth clubs at the Masefield Centre and the Den in Branwood when I was the neighbourhood sergeant for Sturchley and Kingsea South. And since I became a councillor, I attend the local community safety partnership meetings. And I'm afraid, despite the best efforts of some very good officers involved, they're neither local nor are they partnerships. I would go as far to say partnership working is almost non-existent. I've lost count of the number of cases where I share the frustration of housing officers who can't get any engagement from police and vice versa. And don't get me wrong, there are some good initiatives come from the Community Safety Partnership. Initiatives like Operation Fearless, which tackled crime and ASB in Erdington earlier this year, and Operation Servitor, which involves teams of officers patrolling the city centre and Digbeth. They report good results. But unless these events are held regularly, any impact they will have will be short-lived. Now, there's a saying that fear of crime is greater than the reality of crime. And I do think that there are many people who feel frightened of crime in the current political climate for different reasons. And the shocking videos on social media, as outlined by Councillor Oldham, has added to that negative perception. But the reality is, though, that Birmingham overall is a safe city and crime rates have dropped over the past 2 decades. But that does not mean we should be complacent. And as outlined, the rate of violent crime in Birmingham is much too high, and it's much higher than the national average, and we need to do something about it. The shocking murder of Katie Fox, just going about her business in the city centre last month, and the other stabbings that we've seen take place, brings it home that this is an emergency and it must be taken seriously. But to obtain a reduction of ASB and crime we see in our city centre and our high streets, and to remain community trust, requires local knowledge, visible presence and long-term targeted interventions. And it also requires investing in the look of the area. Improving street lighting is all well and good, but if an area looks dirty and neglected, I think we would all agree footfall goes down and crime and antisocial behaviour goes up. Which brings me to graffiti tagging. It's a constant bugbear of mine that despite the cost to the public purse and to business of hundreds of thousands of pounds every year in removal, despite local volunteers spending hours of their time reporting and painting over tags in their high streets, despite the neglect and damage to buildings and even our city monuments, despite the increase in fear of crime that tagging brings to our streets and parks, and despite the persons responsible being a few very prolific offenders who, with not too much effort, could be identified and prosecuted, neither the police nor the council take graffiti tagging seriously. I've been trying for a year to set up a local partnership with police, council officers and business improvement districts to tackle this without much success. So I really welcome the opportunity for this to have added this to this motion, and I'm pleased to hear that it will be supported by council today. I left the police in 2013 and I was forcibly retired as part of the austerity cuts to police numbers. And watching the model I and my team worked so hard to shape being decimated over the past decade grieves me immensely. We talked about austerity earlier, and I do accept the role my party had in that, but in their defence, Operation Paragon, the programme that led to my retirement, was put in place in April 2010 by Gordon Brown. So I want to say that again, that all political parties should face up to the fact that cuts have consequences. A year ago, I said I hope to see a 2025 report which can report back real progress in the delivery of neighbourhood policing, more emphasis on prevention, a huge investment in tackling our unsafe roads, and an upturn in trust and confidence. And last month, in seconding this year's report, I reported a small but welcome move forward. But it's not enough. We now have dedicated neighbourhood officers for each ward, but the local action team officers who are supposed to support them are there in name only. There's a huge hill to climb, but this motion, if fully supported, could help bring back that balance and even begin to restore some of the neighbourhood policing model that many of us remember worked so well. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. I call upon Councillor Baba